Have you ever really wondered what the blueprint of life looks like? I mean, we always talk about DNA as the code, right? But what about the actual machine that runs that code? Well, it turns out it looks surprisingly familiar. What if all that intricate, messy, beautiful chaos going on inside every single one of your cells, what if it could be mapped out? Like a blueprint for something we build every day, something like a computer motherboard. It's a wild thought, right? But it's actually way closer to the truth than you might think. Okay, just take a look at this. Seriously, on the left, that's a keg map. It's basically the wiring diagram for how a cell processes food and energy. And on the right, a simple electronic circuit. The resemblance is it's stunning, isn't it? They're both just these networks of nodes and connections built to process, stuff. And this visual parallel, this is our key to unlocking a whole new way of looking at biology. And let me be clear, this is not just some fun coincidence. Nope. This is a super powerful framework that real biologists and engineers are using right now to make sense of the absolutely dizzying complexity packed inside every cell. So the big takeaway here is this. When you're looking at one of these keg maps, what you are genuinely looking at is the biological version of an engineering blueprint. It's a schematic that shows exactly how a cell is wired to handle matter and energy. It's the same exact idea as a motherboard schematic showing how chips are wired to process information. All right, so let's dive in and really decode this thing. If we're gonna say the cell is a circuit, then what are all the parts? Where are the wires, the transistors, the batteries? Let's break it down. So the wires on a circuit board, in a cell, those are the chemical reactions. What about the transistors and chips, the things that act like switches? Well, those are enzymes, these incredible little proteins that control the flow of everything. The power source, the batteries, that's the cell's own rechargeable energy packs, these little molecules called ATP. And the data, the information being processed, that's the actual stuff, the metabolites, like glucose, that the cell is breaking down or building up. And you know what? The analogy goes even deeper than that. Cells actually use logic gates, just like a computer. For example, check out this biological AND gate. There's a key enzyme for producing energy that will only switch on if, and only if, it detects both glucose that it can process and a signal that the cell is running low on energy. If even one of those signals is missing, nope, the gate stays shut. That is literally decision-making happening at the molecular level. It's amazing. Okay, but this is where this really powerful analogy starts to, not fall apart, but break down in a super fascinating way. See the map, the schematic? It's a brilliant guide to the logic of the cell, but it gets one major physical detail completely wrong. Think about it, on a motherboard, everything is hardwired, right? The components are soldered down and the electrons have no choice but to follow these little copper highways. But in a cell, there are no wires, none. All the parts, the enzymes, the metabolites, everything, they're all just floating around in what scientists call the cytoplasm. It's basically a molecular soup. I love this quote. It just perfectly nails the reality of what's going on inside a cell. It is not some organized, neat little grid. It's controlled chaos. So you've got to be asking, how does anything get done? Well, the connections aren't wires. They're based on something called chemical affinity. You can think of it like molecular magnetism. The right enzyme and the right molecule just have to randomly bump into each other in the crowd, and click, they connect. Here's maybe an easier way to picture it. Electronics? That's a train on a track. The path is totally fixed. Biology? That's more like a bunch of people trying to find their friends in a massive busy room. Everyone's just wandering around until they randomly bump into the right person. It sounds completely random, I know, but this whole soup thing is what makes the system so incredibly robust and flexible. But here's the kicker. This is the amazing part. Even knowing the cell is this chaotic soup, scientists have embraced the circuit board idea so completely that they've built an entire field of science dedicated to rewiring it. They are literally hacking the blueprint of life. And this field, it's called metabolic engineering. The core idea is pretty straightforward. You treat a cell, usually something simple like yeast or bacteria, as a tiny programmable factory. And what these scientists do is they go in and tweak its genetic and regulatory processes. They basically tell it, hey, stop worrying so much about what you normally do, surviving and making more of you. Instead, start producing this thing that we want. So the big question is, how do you actually solder with DNA? How do you go into that molecular soup and start redirecting all the traffic? Well, it's not guesswork. It's a very systematic engineering process. It's a classic engineering loop: design, build, test, learn. First, they design. They use those circuit maps we saw to figure out where the bottlenecks are. Then they build, using incredible tools like CRISPR to actually edit the cell's DNA. After that, they test it. They see what their new creation is actually making. And finally, they learn from the results, refine the design, and just do it all over again, getting better and better with each cycle. And their main strategies? They fit our circuit analogy just perfectly. So if a pathway is running too slow, they can boost the current by telling the cell to make way more of a key enzyme. If the cell is wasting energy making something they don't want, they can literally cut the wire by just deleting the gene for that pathway. And maybe the most impressive part, they can install a whole new circuit board by taking genes from a totally different organism and plugging them in, giving the cell a brand new superpower.
Now, I know this all might sound like something straight out of science fiction, but the real-world results are already here and they're already changing our world. So what exactly are we building with these tiny programmable factories?
Well, for one, we're engineering microbes to turn plant waste into biofuels and even biodegradable plastics. We're also using them to produce really complex medicines that are super hard to make with normal chemistry. And we're even boosting the nutrition in our food, like with golden rice, which was designed to fight vitamin A deficiency in developing countries.
And just think about the impact here. Take the most important anti-malarial drug. By engineering yeast to produce a key ingredient for it, scientists slashed the production cost by a staggering 90%. That's not just about saving money, that's a massive public health victory that has literally saved countless lives.
So it all comes back to this one foundational idea. The cell is a circuit. Yeah, it's a messy one, it's a fluid one, it's a chaotic one, but it's programmable. And that leaves us with this huge, exciting question. Now that we have the blueprints and we have the tools to be the electricians, what amazing, world-changing things should we program life to build for us next?